Hello, all you freedom-loving people. The Russia-Ukraine talks have taken a positive turn. Zelensky is also trying to capitalize on the U.S. view that the CCP is the most dangerous enemy by showcasing the CCP's involvement. Okay, let's get into it. Regarding the Russia-Ukraine war, the latest news is that Secretary of State Marco Rubio said today that President Trump will abandon his mediation efforts if Russia and Ukraine don't make significant progress in their peace talks soon. Rubio told reporters before departing Paris after high-level talks with European and Ukrainian officials, if it's not possible to end the war in Ukraine, we need to move on. We need to determine very quickly now, and I'm talking about a matter of days, whether or not this is doable. A man as productive as President Trump does not want to act slow with this critical situation.
If it can, we're prepared to do whatever we can to facilitate that and make sure that it happens, that it ends in a durable and just way. If it's not possible, if we're so far apart that this is not going to happen, then I think the president's probably at a point where he's going to say, well, we're done.
Rubio says that President Trump would love to see the war stop, but he has a lot of other really important things that are going on that deserve just as much, if not more, of his attention. Rubio also said, it's not our war. We didn't start it. The United States has been helping Ukraine for the past 3 years, and we want it to end, but it's not our war. Perhaps Rubio sent out a similar message at the meeting that there has been some real progress in the negotiations between the U.S. and Ukraine. Ukraine's economy minister says that it has signed a memorandum of intent with the United States, and the text of the agreement would be finalized next week after further talks in Washington. Ukraine's first deputy prime minister and economy minister wrote on X, "We are happy to announce the signing with our American partners of a memorandum of intent which paves the way for an economic partnership agreement and the establishment of the investment fund for the reconstruction of Ukraine." President Trump said that the U.S. mineral deal with Ukraine is expected to be signed next week.
No specific number of days, but quickly, we want to get it done. We're talking about here people dying, and we're talking about over there people are dying also, like on average 2,500 young people, soldiers. They're not from America. They're not from anywhere else other than Ukraine and Russia. But we want to save these lives. So it's 2,500 a week are being killed in battle. It's a vicious battle with the best equipment, the best everything, and it is brutal. 2,500 young people a week. Some of them not so young, actually. They're getting older. They're getting older by the month. But 2,500 a week, and we're going to get it stopped ideally. Now, if for some reason one of the two parties makes it very difficult, we're just going to say you're foolish, you're fools, you're horrible people, and we're going to just take a pass. But hopefully we won't have to do that. Now, Marco's right in saying it. We want to see it end. Think of it. Every day, a lot of people are being killed as we talk about, as they play games. So we're not gonna take that, and we'll see. I think we have a good chance of solving the problem, however.
The deal has been in flux since February when Zelensky got into a dispute with President Trump and Vice President Vance at the White House. This confirms our previous analysis that both Russia and Ukraine want a truce and that their tactics during this period were just an attempt to gain some more benefits for themselves when they negotiate. Rubio's meeting with European leaders on Thursday was the first substantive high-level face-to-face U.S. meeting with Europe on the Russia-Ukraine peace agreement. After the meeting, he said that the U.S. proposed framework for peace was encouragingly welcomed. The broad framework will be taken by the Ukrainians back to Zelensky to discuss. Rubio also spoke with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on the phone after the meeting, and he briefed Lavrov on parts of the peace framework. Ukraine has been doing a public relations campaign this week. The Ukrainian government held a press conference on Monday to make 2 Chinese prisoners of war appear in person to explain the process of them joining the Russian army. CNN said putting prisoners of war in front of reporters and news cameras is almost certainly a violation of international humanitarian law, but Ukraine clearly felt that any reputational damage it might suffer by doing so in a news conference this week would be outweighed outweighed by the value of giving these prisoners of war a platform to speak. The CCP has always claimed neutrality in the Russia-Ukraine war. But these POWs have strongly emphasized that they acted as individuals, pointing out that they were inspired by the sophisticated recruitment videos on the short video platform of the Chinese version of TikTok. But in China, all information on social media is strictly censored. Zelensky did nothing to tamp down such speculation that they went there voluntarily, whether or not Zelensky really thinks that the presence of Chinese nationals in Ukraine was the result of official Beijing policy. Zelensky said last week, "I don't have an answer to this question yet. The security service of Ukraine will work on it. We are not saying that someone gave any command. We do not have such information." But Zelensky went on to say that Ukraine believes that Beijing was aware of what was happening. And CNN believes that Ukraine's choice to make such an unusual move of putting the Chinese soldiers on TV at this point in time has implications. Zelensky is now actively seeking the attention and support of President Trump. Since the Trump administration views the CCP as a major adversary of the U.S., from Zelensky's perspective, anything that it can imply that the CCP supports Russia deserves to be amplified on a diplomatic and economic level. However, Zelensky's message may not only be directed at the United States. Under the presence of President Trump's tariff war, the CCP is actively trying to draw in Europe. And Ukraine is also worried about the EU's recent goodwill toward the CCP. If it is confirmed that the CCP is directly involved in Russia's war of aggression, then the EU may not be able to compromise with the CCP. Former NYPD Sergeant Michael McMahon was sentenced to 18 months in prison on Wednesday for his conviction as an illegal agent of Communist China. He has participated in a scheme to coerce repatriation of a U.S. resident back to China as part of its international repatriation efforts known as Operation Fox Hunt. His two co-defendants, Ju Yong, a resident of East Elmhurst, New York, and Chong Ying Cheng, a resident of Brooklyn, were sentenced to prison in January. As proven at trial, McMahon was hired by Ju as a private investigator to surveil Xu Jin, a former Chinese official, and his family in New Jersey. Beginning in 2012, Xu was accused of corruption by the CCP and had been targeted for repatriation back to China as part of China's transnational repression programs. Xu and his family had accordingly sought to keep their address out of public records. McMahon's task was to locate Xu. He obtained sensitive information about Xu, which he then reported back to Ju and others, including a Chinese police officer. McMahon also conducted surveillance outside the New Jersey home of Xu's relative, under the supervision and direction of several CCP officials, including a CCP police officer and a CCP prosecutor, and he provided Ju and the CCP officials with a detailed report of his observations. As McMahon knew, the purpose of the operation was not only to locate Xu, but it was also to force him to return to China. In April of 2017, CCP officials coerced Xu's then 82-year-old father to travel from China to Xu's home in New Jersey. The poor old father was so frail that a doctor accompanied him for the trip. McMahon followed Xu's father and then was able to learn Xu's address. McMahon immediately provided this information to a Chinese operative. On September 4th, 2018, Zheng and another co-conspirator drove to the address that McMahon had provided and pounded on the front door and attempted to enter the house, and then they peered through the window in the back of the home. Then they left a note on the front door informing Xu that his wife and children will be okay if he surrendered himself and faced a 10-year prison term in China. Following his arrest, McMahon acknowledged knowing that his employers wanted to get the victim back to China so they could prosecute him. However, he pleaded not guilty to all charges, and he said that he was misled into thinking that he was only working for a company trying to recover misappropriated funds. He said that he would not have taken the job if he had known that the CCP was behind it. He said, in court, I was unwittingly used. He was supported by two Republican congressmen, Michael Lawler and Pete Sessions. The two legislators wrote to District Judge Pamela Chen, urging her to waive McMahon from prison time. Federal Judge Leona Brinkema ruled on Thursday that Alphabet's Google illegally dominates two online advertising technology markets. The ruling marked the second time in 8 months that a U.S. judge labeled Google an illegal monopolist. It could lead the Justice Department to seek a forced sale of some of the company's advertising products. In a 3-week trial, the Justice Department and some state governments accused Google of monopolizing the publisher ad server and advertiser ad network markets and of trying to dominate the market for ad trading platforms between buyers and sellers. The prosecution pointed out at trial that Google's monopoly strategy was to eliminate competitors through acquisitions, to lock in customers to make them dependent, and to control the way deals were made in the online advertising market. Google, on the other hand, argues that these are past behaviors of Google. At the time, Google was struggling to make its tools compatible with competitors' products. Leanne Mulholland, Google's vice president of regulatory affairs, said, "We disagree with the court's decision regarding our publisher tools. Publishers have many options and they choose Google because our ad tech tools are simple, affordable, and effective." The Department of Justice said that Google should sell at least one product for placing ads or managing ads, and if this proposal is approved by a judge, it would be the second court order in 2025 that could require Google to sell its assets or change its business model. Having said that about Google, let's look at the antitrust allegations that Meta has encountered. The FTC argues that Facebook overpaid for Instagram and WhatsApp as killer acquisitions in order to get competition out of the way. Meta has vehemently denied the FTC's monopoly claims. Meta asserts that it helped Instagram and WhatsApp achieve growth far beyond what they could have accomplished independently. On Monday, the trial began and the FTC called Zuckerberg to testify for 4 hours, which he privately said he didn't want to do, but had no choice. Sheryl Sandberg, the former COO of Meta and Mark Zuckerberg's longtime second-in-command, took the stand on Wednesday. The FTC is seeking $30 billion in damages to settle this long-running antitrust case. But Zuckerberg is only willing to pay a tiny fraction of that, $450 million. The Wall Street Journal reported that in recent months, Zuckerberg has taken a series of steps to curry favor with President Trump in hopes of getting the president's help. Since January of this year, Zuckerberg has personally visited the White House at least 3 times. During those meetings, Zuckerberg has lobbied for President Trump to personally intervene in order to broker a settlement of antitrust charges against Meta. The report said that Zuckerberg proposed the $450 million amount during a conference call with FTC Chairman Andrew Ferguson in late March. The report also says that on the call, Zuckerberg sounded confident that President Trump would back him up with the FTC. However, Ferguson refused, stating that he would not accept a settlement of less than $18 billion and that Meta would have to agree to guarantee that it would no longer engage in activities that jeopardize competition in the marketplace. In response, Zuckerberg raised the amount to closer to $1 billion, but so far the two sides have been unable to reach an agreement. The next round of negotiations between the United States and Iran over Iran's nuclear program is set to take place on Saturday in Rome. Just like in the first round of talks, Iran's Foreign Minister Araghchi and President Trump's Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff will hold the talks. And the Omani diplomat will continue to mediate the discussions. Last Saturday, each delegation had its own room and they exchanged messages via the Omani diplomat. After the talks last Saturday, the Fars news agency, which is affiliated with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, contradicted a report by Axios regarding a meeting between Arachi and Witkoff. The two met directly while they were leaving the compound, which is quite unusual considering the talks are indirect talks. The Fars news agency reported that the conversation occurred at the end of the negotiations and it lasted only a few minutes. They reported that it was proposed by the Omani side. This contrasted the Axios report, which said that the two leading negotiators spoke for approximately 45 minutes on Saturday. This duration was longer than what was publicly disclosed. Axios described this dialogue as being the highest level between U.S. and Iranian officials in 8 years and as substantive, serious, and excellent. While both sides described the first round of talks as constructive, tensions quickly surfaced over whether Iran should be allowed to continue enriching uranium to weapons-grade levels. The disagreement follows a series of statements from Witkoff, who made it clear that President Trump expects Iran to fully abandon enrichment as a condition of any agreement. In a Fox News interview, Witkoff suggested that he would focus on capping Iran's uranium enrichment levels at 3.67%. This is the level suitable for civilian nuclear reactors. Also, 3.67% is the uranium enrichment limit that was set by Iran's 2015 nuclear deal with the Obama administration. However, Witkoff later changed his tone and he posted on X saying a deal with Iran will only be completed if it is a Trump deal. Any final arrangements must set a framework for peace, stability, and prosperity in the Middle East, meaning that Iran must stop and eliminate its nuclear enrichment and weaponization program. Arachi responded to Witkoff on X, and he rejected any compromise on the enrichment issue. Arachi added that he expected Witkoff to clarify his real positions at the negotiation table. Ahead of the Rome talks this weekend, Arachi traveled to Moscow to deliver a written message from Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, to Russian President Vladimir Putin. The Guardian reported earlier that Iran is expected to reject a U.S. proposal to transfer its uranium stockpile to a third country such as Russia. This is under a plan that is aimed at curbing Iran's nuclear program. However, so far, Russia has declined to comment on whether Russia will be willing to take Iran's enriched uranium. Russia was a signatory to the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which President Trump withdrew from in 2018. Arachi also said that Iran hopes that Russia will play a role in any potential agreement arising from its talks with the U.S. And Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Iran is prepared to reach a nuclear agreement under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Lavrov also said that Russia and Iran remain committed to neutralize Western sanctions. Peskov also said that Putin sent a message to Khamenei via Arachi. But these talks actually involve more than just Russia. Several other countries and officials are also directly or indirectly involved. Globally, diplomatic activity is on the rise. The UN nuclear chief also held talks with Iranian officials when the UN nuclear watchdog chief visited Iran. And this coincides with Saudi Arabia's defense minister, Prince Khalid, arriving in Iran. Reportedly, Khalid met with Khamenei to expand Saudi Arabia relations with Iran in all fields. Marco Rubio and Witkoff also traveled to France to meet with the French president and with the foreign ministers from United Kingdom and Germany.
For the Europeans, they have an important decision to make very soon on the snapback of sanctions, because Iran is clearly out of compliance with the current deal. As you saw, the IAEA was in Tehran yesterday, issued public statements saying Iran is as close as it's ever been to nuclear weapons. The president's made clear Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. That is not going to happen. We're hoping that talks continue and that they're fruitful and that they can lead to something. We would all prefer a peaceful resolution and a lasting one. It has to be something that actually not just prevents Iran from having a nuclear weapon now, but in the future as well, not just for 10 years with some sort of sunset provision or the like. So we discussed that, obviously, because the Europeans the E3 have a decision to make on snapback. Because I believe we should all anticipate, based on the public comments yesterday, that they're about to get a report from the IAEA that says not just is Iran out of compliance, but Iran is dangerously close to a weapon, closer than they've ever been. And then, they're going to have to make a decision about whether they want to reimpose these sanctions. And, if Iran is out of compliance, they have to reimpose the sanctions. So that's going to be a factor in all this, and that's why it was important we talked to them about it before our talks on Saturday.
Today, two senior Israeli officials also held an unannounced meeting in Paris with Witkoff. President Trump also had a phone call with British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer today. They discussed a range of issues, including Iran and the U.S. military action against Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen. Yesterday, President Trump also mentioned the Iran talks when he said that he is in no rush to greenlight strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. This came a day after the New York Times story that revealed that President Trump had rejected an Israeli proposal for a joint attack next month. In his meeting with the Prime Minister of Italy at the White House, President Trump was asked about the report that he had waved off an Israeli plan to attack Iran's nuclear sites.
Israeli attack on Iranian nuclear facilities. Can you comment on that? Is that accurate?
And they said the attack is what?
That you waved off an Israeli plan to attack Iranian nuclear facilities.
I wouldn't say waved off. I'm not in a rush to do it because I think that Iran has a chance to have a great country and to live happily without death. And I'd like to see that. That's my first option. If there's a second option, I think it would be very bad for Iran. And I think Iran is wanting to talk. I hope they're wanting to talk. It's going to be very good for them if they do. And I'd like to see Iran thrive in the future, do fantastically well. I know the Iranian people, they're incredible people. Always have been very smart, very energetic, very successful people. And I don't want to do anything that's going to hurt anybody. I really don't. But Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. It's, pretty simple. It's really simple. We're not looking to take their industry. We're not looking to take their land. All we're saying is you can't have a nuclear weapon.
But it remains unclear whether Iran is okay with not having nuclear weapons. Today, Iran said that reaching a deal with the United States was possible if they demonstrate seriousness of intent and do not make unrealistic demands. So we'll have to wait and see how the talks progress after tomorrow. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for your support of Front Page. Please remember that every like, comment, and share helps more people to see the truth. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And if you have already subscribed, we thank you. But please double check to make sure that you're still subscribed, because some of our audience have reported that they're somehow unsubscribed without their knowledge. We've also heard that some of you don't get notifications of our videos anymore on YouTube. So when you do subscribe on YouTube, please make sure to tap the notification bell as well. Okay, this is our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you heard today, please don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends and family, because everybody deserves to know the truth. And I'd also like to wish you all a very happy Easter.